To Medical Matters now, and thousands of NHS cancer patients will receive genetic testing to discover better treatments. Cancer patients who've exhausted all options are now being offered liquid biopsy blood tests, matching them to personalised medicines. Well, joining us now is consultant medical oncologist Professor Angus Dalgleish. A very good morning to you. Just explain exactly then how this kind of matching of treatments works.
Good morning, and thank you for asking me. Yes, this is the translation of the big genetic revolution that's been going on for decades. And we're now being able to see that different cancers have different signatures, as it were, in their tumour DNA. And we could always do this with biopsies, but a lot of cancers are very difficult to biopsy. You can't do regular biopsies of them all the time. But this is a mechanism for taking the blood of a patient and doing what they call a liquid biopsy. So you can see the DNA from the tumour that's been shed in the blood, and you can look for different targets. And what we're seeing is really quite surprising, is that we've always known that certain genetic types go with certain types of cancer. For instance, the hormone receptors in breast and prostate. But what we are a bit surprised about is that when you really look at different cancers, a lot of them have signatures from a different sort of cancer. And this is quite surprising, but also a fantastic opportunity, because it means that you can target that change in that cancer with a new drug. So overall, this is very good news for patients, because they can have their genetic profile measured from a blood sample, and then it can be read. And then, depending on what it shows, it can be put into the right trial. Or if it's a standard treatment that's available for anybody with that mutation, they can have that treatment. So it really is having a tremendous impact on the management of cancer care.
Professor, in its basic terms, we're looking at a matchmaking service here for cancers and specific trials that are on the market. And we're saying that, we can actually match your cancer to the best treatment for you.
That is it. It's exactly it in one. It is a matchmaking service. So no longer, so for so long, we've been using chemotherapy, and we've known that in some tumour types, it's the best we can do, but only 10 or 15% of people will benefit. And that means that the vast majority of people are receiving a treatment with side effects and toxicity that's not going to really benefit them very much. With this service, we know that the chances of a response are far higher. In my own field, for instance, melanoma, that was so true. Our best chemotherapy for years, basically only about 10 or 15% of people benefited. But then we were able to detect in about half the patients, or about 40% of melanoma patients, they'd have a specific mutation, which is a great target for a new type of drug. Now, if you had that target, the new type of drug has an 80 or 90% chance of reducing your tumour and responding to it. Well, that's an enormous change. It's fantastic. So what we've been doing with melanoma now for over a decade is now becoming available to the other type of tumour types, that they'll be able to read the signature, matchmake not only the drug if it's available sideways, but the big thing here is the number of new drugs being created for these targets that are in clinical trials. So the announcement is that there are going to be centres throughout the country, so that everybody should be in reach really of a centre where they could go to a trial centre where they could get a drug that matches their tumour. So this is really very, very exciting development.
Very exciting, and another example of when science is just such a wonderful, wonderful thing. How significant will this be on outcomes then for people who are diagnosed with cancer, and could it actually improve the UK's successes? Because we do lag, don't we, behind other countries in terms of outcomes?
Yes, we do. I don't know how much of that is really in treatment. I think a lot of that is early diagnosis and staging and getting the treatment started, all of which have been made so much worse with the pandemic over the last 2 years. And that really is going to show. But otherwise, it's going to make a tremendous difference sequentially. I've recently gone back and looked at some old treatments and found that those people who have the treatments in certain sequences do much better than even adding all the treatments in together. And of course, they get much less toxicity when they're receiving things sequentially. And because we're able to see what's going on in the tumour, treat it, if the disease escapes, which it often does, it means that we can then go back, look at another biopsy and see the reason it's escaped is produced another mutation, which is another Achilles heel target for the tumour. So we can take drug X, which has come along, and treat the patient with that. And it's very exciting because I've got quite a lot of patients now who years ago we thought they'd be very lucky to have 18 months. And because of new treatments coming along and seeing new targets, such as the ones I mentioned in melanoma, they're still here several years later. And I think this is the way it's going to impact. People will live a lot longer and hopefully better with less toxicity.
Yeah. Professor, because cancer has such horrible repercussions for people and it strikes fear into so many people's hearts, somebody who is going through cancer at the moment, they're going to be looking at you and saying, how do I get on one of these trials? How do I get involved? How can I take this a step further? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I would say that if they're on a certain treatment, the standard treatments, what we call first line and second line, are fairly standard throughout the country, and that's what they will have. These treatments are being very much aimed at when you run out of the standard treatments or you don't respond to it. And your oncologist will say, we've run out of the standard treatments now. You can ask the patient to really push for this early on, is that they're lined up so that their blood can be investigated, measured for these mutations, so that when they need a treatment that would not normally be available for them, that would be the end of their standard treatment, they know what they've got and they can be lined up to be referred to one of these centres.
Great news that we're hearing here, as Isabel saying, just, the advancements that there are in scientific research. We wish you and everybody who works in the field that you do the best of luck and continued success. Professor Angus Dalgleish, thank you very much indeed.